was a powerboat racer. And one of the races we had was in Nashville, Tennessee, and the Grand Marshal was Johnny Cash. And it happened to be the year that A Boy Named Sue was the big song for Johnny Cash. So it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me to speak here at this school, this university. The oldest university in Warsaw, 1816. It's amazing. But it's great to be here, and I was in Łódź. Is that right? Łódź. Yeah, right on the mark. Last week, and then I guess that was in Berlin for the big celebration there at the Berlin Wall. And it was interesting being there last night and listening to all that was going on. And it was gorgeous, it was pretty, it was exciting. And I kept on listening to the word Reagan and listening to the word communism and the word Thatcher. And I still haven't heard those words. And I thought to myself, it's celebrating the fall of the Berlin Wall, so many people going free. And people who were very close to it and helped bring that wall down. Their names weren't mentioned. And if you were there last night and communism never mentioned, you'd think that Mikhail Gorbachev was the anti-communist at the party last night. Because his face was going across a TV screen on a jumbotron all night long, and every time his face would go across the jumbotron, people would applaud in the streets, and young people in the streets applauding Mikhail Gorbachev. I'm thinking to myself, do they know any history here about what went on? And to think that last night, if you were at that event at the Berlin Wall, nobody ever told you who put the wall up. Nobody ever brought that to the forefront, that wall was put up by communism, by the Soviet Union, to keep people from, in fact, being free. So I have been talking about the fact with others that maybe the real enemy in the future is not the old Soviet Union, if you will, but really complacency. Let's not talk about it. We don't talk about it. It never existed. Therefore, we don't have to worry about it. And what happens is if we do that, then we just go back and revisit and put up new walls in the future. Walls with the economy, walls with everything else that we get involved in. But as I said, it's a pleasure for me to be here. And we're going to have a little time later for some Q&A. So you all can ask me questions and we can talk about a lot of things. I was in a conference here about an hour ago. And it was interesting, in the kind of debate that we were in, one of the gentlemen in the debate started talking to me about the economy, about Reaganomics. And what I told him and told people there was the fact that, as being the son of Ronald Reagan, I lived under Reaganomics before the rest of the world lived under Reaganomics. Because my father actually believed in living when he preached. One of the few politicians who in fact believed in living when he preached. And the example I gave him, one of the examples was this, that as a young child of 8 years old, riding out to the ranch with my father one Saturday afternoon, I decided to ask my father for a larger allowance. Because my father, I thought it was actually pretty cheap. He was only giving me $1 a week allowance. And the reality of it was that I thought I was worth more than $1 a week. And I was raised in Beverly Hills, a very ritzy part of Los Angeles, where all the rich kids were. I thought I was one of them, and I deserved to spend as much money as I could, just like my friends could. And when I was driving out to the ranch with my father, asking for a larger allowance, my father decided, instead of giving me a larger allowance at that point, decided to tell me about the tax system in America. Now, as an 8-year-old child, I didn't want to hear about the tax system in America. I just wanted to know if indeed I could get a larger allowance. But for 35 minutes, I heard about the government making 90 cents out of every dollar. I heard about the government leaving him only 10 cents of every dollar. And with that 10 cents, all the things he had to pay for. He had to pay for his first wife, my mother, Jane White, my sister Maureen, 4 years older than I was, myself, He had to pay for his new wife, Nancy, had to pay for their new house, their new daughter, Patty. He had to pay for the cars. He had to pay for the ranch. He had to pay for the foreman. He had to pay for the horses and the cattle that were on the ranch. And he had to do that all with the 10 cents that was left out of every dollar. Now, one of the things I was thinking about, I said, this guy must make a lot of 10 cents. But the reality was that the government was taking so much. And so I felt so sorry for my father as we were driving up to the ranch that day that I actually offered back to my father half my allowance. I thought he needed the help. And he told me that in fact what he would do is that he would give me an increase in allowance if indeed he got a president who would give him the tax break. So in 1960, John F. Kennedy was elected. And John F. Kennedy, a liberal Democrat at the time, most likely today would be a conservative Republican with his policies, strong defense, more money in the pocket of the electorate. John Kennedy gave him a tax break. John Kennedy moved the tax system from taking 90 cents of every dollar to 70 cents of every dollar. And so he gave me an increase in allowance from, in fact, $1 to $5. I was now, of course, in high school, and it didn't seem like a lot, but it was an increase in allowance. Now, what did I do with that? What I did with it was spend it. So I put it right back in the economy, which was the whole idea of Reaganomics. By putting more money into the hands of the people, they will spend the money. And it was called trickle-down economics. I think of what's going on now in America as trickle-up poverty, where we're trying to impoverish everybody at the same time. And by doing that, you stop the creation of entrepreneurs, and you stop the creation of jobs in a country that is going to bring more money into the government, whether it's state, local, or the national government. When my father used to do the Reaganomics back in 1981 and gave us the largest tax break in the history of America, he moved the tax rolls from 70% down to 28%. And at the time that he did that, and took over in Washington, the federal government had, under Jimmy Carter, had gotten us to a point where we had double-digit inflation, we had double-digit unemployment, and double-digit interest rates. People couldn't afford to buy a home, couldn't afford to stay in the home, couldn't afford basically those things that you need to live in America. By instituting these tax cuts in America,